I'm here in Lindau at the 59th meeting of Nobel Laureates. Following a week of solid sunshine, we've just had a torrential downpour and a fierce thunder and lightning storm. Weather's always been inherently variable, and climate has changed over millennia, so perhaps it's not surprising. But what we know now is that climate is changing at an unprecedented rate, and scientists say that we're to blame. So what can we do about it?
Most experts, not just scientists now, but economists and politicians and so on, the consensus being that it would be wise to attempt for the temperature, the surface temperature, not to rise above 2 degrees.
Over the past week, I've met some of the best minds in science who are turning their attention to this problem. Joining me have been 3 young, enthusiastic researchers, all working on various aspects of climate change and wondering what they can do to solve the problem.
I'm working with catalysts in a new process to make biodiesel that makes it much more environmentally friendly, more economical, and more portable so that we can actually bring it to countries and develop sustainable economies around this technology.
We are running out of time. The climate is affected so much, and we have got to do something about it. And the sun is a major source of energy, has been for the last so many centuries. The Egyptians worshipped the sun. They thought it was the source of all energy, and it is. So why can't we utilize its energy for the benefit of mankind?
I study chemical oceanography, and my research is focused on the Gulf of Mexico hypoxic zone. I study the effects of nutrients from the Mississippi River and the increasing hypoxia in the estuary that it runs into. What interests me about climate change is that what we do in one part of the world may have impacts downstream. Humans are also impacting the rest of the ecology.
Now we had just a few days to find out if meeting the laureates at Lindau could really change our ideas.
I guess we can also learn from the last generation. So the laureates that are here this week presumably will have some amazing insights into, into what we can do. I mean, you must all have burning questions for specific laureates, I imagine.
They were the people who actually discovered how detrimental our actions are to the climate.
If we're serious about addressing this problem, essentially what you're talking about is reinventing how humans interact with the world and how we interact with each other as well. I think I see it as that fundamental, and that's where I go back and forth from being optimistic to pessimistic. Is can we change our fundamental behavior and be aware of our impacts?
Unless we talk about it, we cannot do something. We cannot, when you don't think about something, when you're just like an ostrich, you say no problem.
Are there a lot of ostriches in Pakistan? I mean, do you feel that people
I'm afraid yes. Yeah. Because in the developing world, they are more focused on other things. They're more focused on progress and infrastructure and education and health. They can't afford to think about climate.
What would we learn from the Nobel Prize-winning scientists at Lindau?
I think the first thing is to recognize the scale of the problem. I think it's encapsulated in the fact that we use, in 1 year, fossil fuel that took about 1 million years to produce. So basically fossil fuel efficiency is 1 million years, and we have to increase our efficiency of capturing solar energy and converting it into something that's useful by a factor of 10 to the 6.
There will be a tremendous pressure to go for nuclear energy. If it should become a major direction of replacing oil and gas, it would, in my opinion, have a huge probability of leading to a catastrophe.
I thought what was interesting was that they thought, to deal with climate change, we might actually need to build many nuclear, power plants, and what would the societal implications for that be?
And also there was this question of nuclear proliferation. This is such a great alternative to the fossil fuels, but we can't use it because of the political and societal implications. We do need to, just tone down our living standards.
And I don't think you have to sacrifice the standard of living, but you have to be able to conserve.
Our next meeting was with 2 scientists who won the Nobel Prize for work which led to a worldwide ban on ozone-depleting CFC gases.
What could we learn from the experience of Sherwood Rowland, now in his 80s, and Mario Molina?
I guess a lot of researchers who are working on climate change are in the position where their research is very policy relevant. What advice would you give them?
Speak up. There's no one better informed than the people involved themselves, and so they should not be bashful about it.
It seems like, at least on the surface, you have very similar problems with, atmospheric interactions and man-made gases. But are the two problems of the CFCs and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, are they really that similar, or are they completely different problems and we need to have different solutions?
They're much different because of the magnitude of the CO2 problem, that affects every use of energy. One could easily imagine eliminating the use of CFC propellants, but you can't easily imagine getting rid of carbonaceous fuels.
Since both of you weathered the storm of the CFCs and getting the policy passed through on that, and it was very successful, how do you view the carbon dioxide issue? Are you optimistic, or is it almost too big of a problem?
We draw a lesson from the ozone story, which is that, first of all, we have to be very patient for any agreement to be reached. It was frustrating for a while, and we thought nothing could be done. But I guess reason prevailed, and some agreement was reached, although quite weak at the very beginning. There is an opportunity this year in Copenhagen to reach some sort of agreement. If we open the doors, maybe it will be an important step.
How can you convince the people and the governments from the developing countries to actually focus their resources more on countering climate change when they have so many mouths to feed?
The first important message is that we're not talking about a competition, environment versus economic development. It's actually the other way around. If you look at predictions, you look at where we are heading, it's going to be much harder for developing countries, certainly Pakistan, Bangladesh and so on, will have a harder time improving their standard of living if climate change materializes the way we think it might. The important message here is for developing countries to recognize that they will be better off if they collaborate and participate in the solution of the problem.
We've got two approaches, adaptation and mitigation. And some of the mitigation strategies are to remove CO2 from the atmosphere and sequester that. What are some of these sequestration methods that we can look at?
CO2 remains in the atmosphere for almost a millennium. It's not just centuries. That just means that we're stuck with whatever we did already unless we begin to take it out of the atmosphere. There are some ideas. Chemically you can take it out, although at a substantial cost, but it's possible.
The research that you did during your postdoc actually, got you a Nobel Prize, and not everyone is going to be that fortunate, even though they might persist and work very hard. What would you say they need to keep going?
Keep trying.
Let me just add, I basically agree with Sherry, but I would add to it, you have to do what you like, so do it with passion. And there are so many important problems that society is facing. Why not try to focus on solving some of those problems? But from the point of view of society, do not forget about fundamental science.
Back in 1974, you both called for a worldwide ban on CFCs. Now we're facing the problem of climate change. Would you call for a worldwide ban on coal plants, or do you believe the climate scientists should be doing that?
As a responsible individual who wants future generations to prosper, I would certainly call for a ban at the moment. There's no, because these plants might be there for 50 years. So why commit society to these emissions for such a long time?
If you have carbon capture and storage, so that you aren't putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That's the real problem, is putting a greenhouse gas loose in the atmosphere and not burying it underground. Because if you can bury it underground, then you don't need to ban the burning in the first place.
But did our young researchers agree with the views of these veterans? So here we are in a Lindau bubble for a week. And it's an environment that nurtures positivity and everyone here cares deeply about what's going on. Do you think it's a reflection of reality, really?
I think we need a breath of optimism occasionally to renew our drive to find these solutions to climate change.
I have a lot of faith in the science, and the science exists, and we can use the science, but it comes down to cost. And where I'm more pessimistic is with the people. I mean, are the people going to be able to meet this problem and, you know, just face the fact that energy is no longer going to be cheap? No matter which way you cut it, whether we run out of it or we have a new source, is going to be more expensive.
Yesterday we all had an opportunity to talk to Professors Rowland and Melina, and you all had the opportunity to pose your questions to them. So I'm just wondering how you found that.
Dr. Melina was pretty clear in that that we can meet global climate change with the technology that we have now. But at the same time, our biggest challenge is going to be motivating people and policy and actually getting the right policies implemented. So.
And what about the worldwide ban on coal? Do you think that that's something that we...
He wasn't exactly calling for a worldwide ban on coal, but on creating new coal plants. By not building new ones, you're forcing other technologies to be found and to be utilized.
They both added the caveat, they're fine with it as long as you find a way to sequester it. But you know, I still...
That's a big challenge.
And working with some sequestration technology, to me it seems still so far off and so expensive to implement it that, you know, I'm worried that the technology is not there yet.
On the last day, everyone headed to the nearby island of Mainau to hear a group of experts discuss the science and management of climate change. Among the panellists were two scientists who won the Nobel Peace Prize for their work on climate change, and also political scientist Bjørn Lomborg, who has gained notoriety for his controversial views on global warming.
The concentration of greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere has reached unprecedented levels. We have to realize the enormity of the problem. If we get carried away with the current pattern of development, without regard to the externalities, the harmful impacts that we are imposing on the natural resources of this planet, then clearly we are leaving a world that is unsustainable, not just for future generations, but even in our lifetimes.
How big of a problem is global warming? It is a problem, yes. If you look at the economic models, they estimate that the damage from global warming is in the order of 15 to 25 trillion dollars. The total worth of the 21st century is somewhat on the order of 3,000 trillion dollars. So we're talking about half or 1% of GDP in the 21st century. So global warming is certainly a problem that we need to fix. But perhaps crucially, it's probably not the most important one that we can leave our descendants with.
We cannot just measure the damage for future generations in terms of dollars. Among the most worrisome threats that we have is the threat of practically irreversible changes to the climate.
We should remember that carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere today is 29% higher than ever in the last 800,000 years. What we now need is actually to have a globally binding climate target, and deriving from that target drastic emission reductions of carbon dioxide. We already now know from science how much that would be. In order to, for example, meet the climate target of 2 degrees Celsius, we need everybody on this planet, all countries on this planet, by the year 2050, have reduced carbon dioxide emissions by 80%.
I'm Faroha from Pakistan. How do you change attitudes? The developing countries, they have other priorities. Should the developed world take the lead?
Well, firstly, I agree with you. I think it's the developed nations who have to take the first step. You know, I mean, we are from the same part of the world. In a slum in Karachi or Mumbai, what do people have in their homes? Not a piece of furniture, but a television set. What fires their aspirations? The fact that somebody is driving a swanky car or has got an air conditioner in the home and, waste. I think what you really need to see is the developed world making major efforts to bring about a change.
Is climate change a problem? Absolutely.
But when you work within climate change, of course, that's what your main focus is. But if you look across all the different areas of the world, clearly, 3/4 of the world's population live in abject poverty. They live in the medieval times right now. And to them, it's probably more important to get clean drinking water, food, sanitation, basic rights like education and healthcare.
I work with a company that's actually developed sustainable biodiesel specifically for developing communities.
If your product actually does mean that these people can make biodiesel cheaper than they could buy it, it's a great product, and I would imagine a lot of countries around the world are going to take this up really quickly. But certainly many of the products that we talk about usually are products that are not nearly there. And so essentially the question is, do we want to have third world countries spend lots of money on things that they didn't really need compared to, schools, healthcare centers? The problem is that over the long haul, we don't seem to be able to find a way to stop using fossil fuels. I don't want to buy inefficient technologies. I want to pay you to make much more efficient solar panels. If you could come up with solar panels that would be cheaper than fossil fuels, we'd be done.
But do you think this is practical? We talk about it so much. There has been a lot of discussion on it. But do you really think it will get translated into reality, or that Copenhagen is going to be a success?
No, I don't think it's going to be a success the way we look at it right now, because everybody comes to the table and says these unrealistic numbers. Bottom line, it makes everybody, all countries, promise we will do something that's harmful for us that will mainly help everyone else in 100 years. That's a very, very hard sell. That's why everybody, all politicians love to promise stuff, but they won't actually do it. We should much more focus on investing money in you and all three of you and a lot more to make sure that you come up with the technologies that'll make it cheap enough for everyone to buy it.
But the bottom line really is that I suppose you can't just measure the impact of climate change in dollars, which was a point that came up on the panel today.
No.
How do you prioritize, for example, health over climate change? What's your rationale for these decisions?
You're absolutely right. It's important to say when you try to measure problems in dollars, obviously it's not just about productivity loss. Most people put most importance to human lives, but they also put importance into wetlands and the biosphere in general. Obviously they care about hypoxia and are willing to pay to avoid hypoxia.
Yeah.
So we try to put all of those prices in there and come up with a number.
And what about future generations? Should we value those as much as the current generation?
No.
No.
And we don't.
Okay.
And that's a very important, but it's very often sort of brought up. We should care just as much for future generations as we should for present generation. Now that sounds really nice, but none of us do that.
And how does it feel when so many people disagree with you?
It's not so much about me being right or wrong. It's about this discussion being the right way to go with the policy, because what I really fear is we failed in Kyoto. We actually failed in Rio before that. And it seems likely to me that we are going to fail again in Copenhagen and waste another 10 years. Why on earth is it we're not going to start thinking about maybe we could do it differently. Maybe we could do it smarter.
So that was an interesting meeting. How did you feel about it?
Well, he's very charismatic and he can easily convince us to his point of view. I don't think he has so controversial opinions actually as he sounds on the stage. Somehow I could understand him much better in a one-to-one conversation.
Sure, you actually agreed with him from the point of view of what people in developing countries might actually need as priorities. I thought that was a very interesting conversation.
Yes, actually, he was the only one who was spot on when the attitudes of the developing world was concerned. No one even got near to what people there think, but he had an idea.
In the United States, there's still a lot of people that say global climate change isn't a problem, we don't need to do anything about it, we don't even need to talk about it. And I'm worried that his message might be used to support that.
Coming back to an overview of the whole week, what have the highlights been for you?
Listening to so many discussions there and so many people here, I do believe that maybe we cannot solve this problem entirely, but we can take small steps, and we can take those small steps immediately. So that's a good point. I feel optimistic.
One thing that I've just come out is really reinvigorated, about the sustainability as an issue. There are a lot of really smart people, really dedicated people that are concerned and working towards finding a solution. When you're in a lab by yourself running experiments, you feel kind of alone, and to find that there's other people that really care about it as well, it makes you feel good, and it feels like your research really matters.
Staying below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels is quite a challenge, to be honest, and what do you think our chances are?
I've been encouraged in this meeting in that science is up to the challenge.
Okay.
And I wasn't entirely sure before I came that was the case, but I'm absolutely confident that we have the technology, we have the brains and the power and the people to do it. Then it just comes down to political and personal will, and that's so I'm optimistic, actually very optimistic now with the science. I'm still hopeful about the political and personal side of it.
We have to change minds, and changing minds doesn't happen overnight. You have to change policies, and that doesn't happen overnight.
I came to Lindau a week ago feeling deeply concerned about the state of the planet. So having been here for a week, how do I feel? Well, I still feel like we have massive challenges ahead, and that the road to Copenhagen in December won't be an easy one. But having met some really enthusiastic young researchers and some of the best minds in atmospheric science, I feel that we're a bit closer to solving the problem. All of us who took part in the climate film this week have come away with a renewed sense of optimism. I know that Faroa and Brian have both said that they feel more optimistic, and Brandy certainly said that she feels really passionate about dedicating her career to ocean health. I feel more optimistic about the Copenhagen process. I feel that we still have massive challenges on the road ahead, and that it won't be easy getting the political will we need to change our world, to change our whole energy system and our economic system. But what I do feel is that we have the minds and the tools to do that. And that's something I probably didn't feel a week ago.